Joining me now is National Senator Matt Canavan. Welcome to the program. Why do energy experts get it so wrong so often?
Well, Rita, they're beholden to ideology. That's the problem here. They have been for many years. In fact, the former head of AEMO, the energy market operator that you were referring to there, Audrey Zibelman, she headed it up and she did a podcast interview a few years ago in which she admitted that her staff were more committed to decarbonising than to keeping the lights on. Now, the Australian energy market operator, they're actually in charge. They're given the remit, the job. They've got one job to do, and that's to keep the lights on, and yet they've been focused on this ideological pursuit of reducing carbon emissions. So because they've got their blinkers on here, they've got the blinkers on about the risks to reliability, the risks to affordability, they easily miss these crises emerging. I must give them their due, though, in a report that few people have commented on a couple of months ago, AEMO did admit that in the next 3 years, New South Wales, South Australia and Victoria all face energy deficits, electricity deficits, I should say. So they all face periods where AEMO won't be able to guarantee that the lights stay on. Now, the reason for that is because we've been obsessed, AEMO and others have been obsessed with unreliable renewable energy, and we just don't have enough reliable electricity now to keep the lights on the next few years.
And despite how wrong they get it, despite how ideological they are and denying the reality of the situation we're in, governments continue to be guided by them and create policies around that. Why is that continuing to happen? And let's not pretend it didn't happen under the previous government as well.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'll come back to the previous government. But the basic answer to your question is Canberra's the only place in the country where failure is rewarded. So whenever a government agency fails, and there's then therefore, say, for example, an energy regulator fails to secure basic and reliable energy supplies, the consequence is the government throws a whole lot of money, extra money, at that energy regulator. So you've got these very perverse incentives as well, that sometimes doing bad is actually good in Canberra because you get rewarded with more responsibility, more money, etc. It is extremely rare, almost never happens, that someone loses their job. And I've been calling for the heads of these energy regulators for years, because if you were in the private sector and you managed your business like this, you would be out of work. And there has to be consequences for failure. And going back to your addendum there in the question of the previous government, yes, we failed as well. I've got to admit that. When the Hazelwood coal-fired power station shut in 2017, there was an effort of a few of us to try and keep that open, or at least keep it in a mothballed state. And we pulled in the energy regulator and they said, no, there's nothing wrong. Everything's fine. We've got plenty of power. We made them put a press release out that night, late at night it was this meeting, we made them put a press release out that night saying that to the world, what they said to us. And then 6 months later, we had to buy diesel generators to keep the lights on in Victoria over summer. They were hopelessly wrong then. No one paid the price for that terrible advice. And so we keep getting these mistakes. And this is not just something that happened in the past. In a few months' time, Rita, the Liddell coal-fired power station is due to shut in New South Wales. That's 20% of New South Wales electricity supply. It could have just as big ramifications as Hazelwood did a few years ago.
It is just deliberate self-harm that's been committed here against Australian households, Australian businesses, and we're going to see how ugly it gets in the coming years. Now, let's switch tack. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, he's addressing the Liberal Party about how to win elections. He would know. He turned a blue state red when he ran in Virginia. What can we learn from him, Matt?
Well, from what I've read of Glenn's advice to Australians, it's that a conservative political party, a right of centre party, should advocate for conservative and right of centre values. No. It's revolutionary, I know, Rita. It's gobsmacking, in fact, I think, to the media here. I'm not exactly sure why it was a story today in the papers, except that there seems to be this misconception here in Australia that somehow the path to victory for the Liberal and Nationals parties, which sit on the right side of our politics, somehow the path to victory for us is to adopt left-leaning policies, to adopt high taxes and regulation and even quasi forms of socialism. I think Glenn's got it right, though. As I say, his advice is kind of obvious, but sometimes the obvious point, the bleeding obvious, has to be pointed out. And what we should do, if we want to get back into government, is to get behind policies that lower people's taxes, that cuts their cost of living, that gets governments out of their lives and help them to start businesses and provide for their families. That's got to be at the core of any Conservative leadership. And I do think Peter Dutton offers a hope for that. He gave a very good budget reply speech a few months ago. It is very early days, and there is still really the glow of the honeymoon of this new Labor government. But the challenges are building up for our nation. And if we provide a credible, conservative, as a low-tax, small government alternative, we could do very well at the next election.
Well, yes, it's been a long honeymoon, 7 months, and you would hope, federally at least, the party would learn from what's happened in Victoria, what happened at the last election federally, what happened in WA. I don't know how many examples you need that trying to mirror Labor is not the path to success for a centre-right coalition. And we're still having now these reports about the Liberals being hopelessly divided over the voice or the race-based referendum. But how divided are they? Are these reports coming from the same group of 4 or 5 troublemakers that seem to complain about every Conservative position the party has?
Well, it seems to me like this is a bit of a Seinfeld debate. It's a debate about nothing. There really is nothing to see here. I mean, there are a few members of the Liberal and National parties that support the voice. Of course, when you get a room of around 100 people anywhere in the country, you're going to have some different views. Now, as a political party, or both our political parties, I'm the Nationals Party, but both the Liberal and Nationals parties have a proud history of respecting those different views and giving the rights to its members as elected officials to go out and represent their views if they see fit. And this debate is no different. So if Senator Andrew Bragg, who's quoted in the press today, wants to advocate for the voice, good luck to him. He's able to do that as a free member of the Liberal and National Party room. But the supporters of the voice that I've spoken to within our party room are few and far between. There isn't
and yet
much
they seem to be dictating
for that.
Well, but yet they seem to be having a disproportionate voice, and perhaps that's because we still have not had the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, come out with a position on this, a firm position, and articulate why the Liberals are for or against. I just don't understand how 7 months later we're still waiting for the opposition to formally announce where they stand. We know where the Nationals stand. When are we going to find out where the Liberals stand?
Well, Rita, it's a bit hard for me to comment on the Liberal Party. I'm sorry, I'm not a member of its room. I'm not involved in its discussions. I'll leave that to them. But as you say, the Nationals Party has come to a very firm position. It was a very strong position. Obviously, we had a member leave, seemingly using the voice as an excuse. It seemed a bit of a Clayton's excuse to me. He probably had other reasons for that. But regardless, we've come out and taken a position in the Nationals Party. And I think it's very important because this is a major change to our constitution. It doesn't happen very often in our history, and there should be alternative viewpoints put forward to the Australian people so they can decide. Look, ultimately, whatever the Liberal Party decide, this is going to be a matter for the Australian people. And my prediction is that in a year's time, at Christmas next year, hardly anybody will be talking about the voice. The only people talking about the voice will be the voice itself if it gets up at a referendum. And unfortunately for the Australian people, especially Indigenous peoples, all the voice does, think of it, its name itself, all the voice does is talk. There's no action. It doesn't take action to fix crippling domestic violence levels, lack of job opportunities in Indigenous communities. All it's going to do is talk. More talk in Canberra, more jobs in Canberra for those public servants coming back to where we started. It is not a solution. And Jacinta Price and other Nationals will be out there putting this alternative view that the answer to Indigenous Australians' problems is not more politicians in Canberra.
No more activists also and race politics enshrined in the Constitution either. Matt Canavan, thank you so much for your time this evening.